Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy. None of them can stop at a time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a prophecy. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing? These songs of freedom is all I ever heard. Redemption song. Redemption song.
Emancipation. What does emancipation means to you? How does it feel to be emancipated? Have we successfully passed on from generation to generation the toils and the torment, the suffering that our foreparents went through? What we now refer to as villages were once estates, and the names were all given by the owners of the many plantations. For example, we say Saint-Hilaire Point, but do you know Mr. Saint-Hilaire was the name of the plantation owner? We know of St. Louis Hill, but do you know Madame St. Louis was the name of the owner of that plantation? And what we now refer to as Boggles as a village, the owner of that estate was Robert Boggles. And we say Jean-Pierre, but do you know the name of the owner was Jean-Pierre? Africans were brought here. They traveled across the Atlantic to work on the plantation. When they got here, those in Grenada, they were auctioned at the market square. In Carriacou, they went to the different plantations and they worked. They worked in shackles. They worked the plantation in sweat, in blood, sweat, and tears, with whip on the back. In pain, they walked, they toiled the land. Do you know, at one time, Carriacou exported many crops? For example, cotton. We exported cotton to England by thousands of pounds yearly. It was said that Carriacou had a very fertile land for cotton. We also exported molasses, sugar, and other products of sugarcane. As they planted sugarcane, they even built the ruins. It is now evident in Bel-Air and littered around Carriacou many sugar mills, which shows that they planted and they worked. Do you know, at once we also exported indigo dye? Yes, it is quite evident, as now there is a Ningo well. We call it Ningo well. The reason why the water of that well was used to make the dye indigo. I cannot leave out lime. We exported lime juice. 2 factories that juiced lime was Crexton and Dumfries being the largest estate in Carriacou. From sunrise to sunset. When they got home, it was some time for fun. With drums, they communicated. It was something that the owners did not like to hear. But the enslaved, they beat the drums. They beat the drums. This is how the big drum came around. We know that Carriacou is known as the land of culture. But how did the big drum started? When they gathered and beating the drums, they danced. In dancing, they realized the similarities in the dances. They realized the similarities in the movements. We know that all of them came from Africa. Different nations of Africa. And today in Carriacou, we have almost 9 different tribes of African dances. We have the Temne, the Ibu, the Manding, the Cromanti, just to name a few. This is how our big drum started. Functions. They were given the worst produce of the plantations, which they took to the market to sell. The money that they were given, they used it to celebrate and have fun. They had parties. That was the only time of the year they were allowed to mimic the owners of the plantation. They were allowed to dress like them in their colorful shirts and the fancy hat. So now you're wondering how Carnival started? This is how it was started. We hear of the flambeau parade. We wonder, how did the flambeau started? I told you, they came from the plantation in the night. In those days, they did not have electricity. So they used the macenteau, the lighted macenteau, as a way to get home, to give them light. Even the Grenadian jab-jab You want to know how the Jab Jab started? It was on this same plantation. They burned the sugar cane, and the black from it, they painted their bodies. Julian Fedon was a free colored planter in Grenada who led the revolution against the British. Cromarty Kojo was one of his confederates. Cromarty Kojo swam from Sotes in Grenada to Carriacou on the collapse of the revolution. He was one of the leading ancestors. When he got to Carriacou, he disguised and dressed as a woman and hid himself among the other slaves. They fed him and gave him drink. From plantation to plantation, he traveled and led a rebellion among the slaves.
The culture of this beautiful island, oh, we fight so hard to save these traditions. It is amazing how throughout the years the culture has evolved, and today we see most kayaks are involved. From the building of a tomb to the gathering for maroon, you hear the sweet song of the drums as the crowd they swing along. Romantic Kojo, ay, daule, daule, ay, romantic Kojo.
The slaves in Carriacou were said to be peaceful, they were said to be calm, and they were scared at first, but they rebelled. They rebelled because they know of the struggles, of the pain they went through. They know what they went through before coming here. There were many who traveled with them who did not make the journey, as they were tied up in shackles and in chains and were placed in the deck of the boats and traveled 3 months or more on water to get here. They were not properly fed, so they were malnourished. They had diseases, yellow fever, smallpox, malaria, just to name a few. Many of them died from diseases. Many of them died from the whips on their back they received, sometimes because they woke up late. With the many rebellions which was led among the slaves, finally the voices were heard, and in 1834 a bill was passed and slavery was abolished. Yet they were not free to leave. They kept them for another 4 years. And on August 1st, 1838, they were told that they are free. They are free at last. They no more have to walk the lands of the plantation. They are free. Many in Carriacou, they celebrated the freedom. Sugar Adams, who was a well-known big drummer, he said, and I quote, "I celebrated the freedom by wearing shoes on my feet. Only one time during the year, on August 1st. All the other times," he said, "I walked barefooted. But on August 1st, he wore shoes as a form of celebrations because we are free. All Africans are free. And today, we celebrate our freedom. August 1st, Emancipation Day. Slavery was no more, for it was abolished. We are free at last.
Every time that I remember the only slavery days, my little heart cries out. Oh, I wish that one day that we gonna walk down Freedom Street with cash on my back and chains around my feet. We walk in the burning sun till the sweat and the tears stains my face. Freedom Street, walking Freedom Street, Freedom Street, talking Freedom Street, Freedom Street, talking Freedom Street. Come take my